Welcome to this preview of HRMAC Summit 2012. This program features a conversation with keynote speaker Ann Robinson. Ann is the Director of Supply Chain Strategy and Analytics at Verizon Wireless. She is also President-elect of Informs, a professional organization focused on applying advanced analytical methods for making better business decisions. In this interview with Michelle McGovern, Director of HR at the American College of Surgeons and Chair of the Summit 2012 Planning Committee, Ann gives us a sneak preview of what she'll be covering at Summit 2012.
Great, Ann. Thank you for joining us today. We're really looking forward to having you at HRMAC Summit in November. I'd like to start off by acknowledging I know that you had your background at Cisco and Verizon, have a PhD in industrial engineering from Stanford. Can you give us a little bit more insight about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for inviting me today. This is a great way to get introduced to the audience. I'm originally from St. John's, Newfoundland in Canada, and grew up at a time when it was somewhat of a difficult economy, so I learned pretty young about the importance of transferable skills. I'd always been keen on numbers and math, and when I learned about this field of operations research or analytics and that it could be applied in any field across any domain, that was really attractive to me given where I had grown up. I have a math degree, followed by management sciences, and then, as you mentioned, a PhD in industrial engineering. My career has mostly taken me through supply chain management, so that process of raw materials through finished product. But I joined supply chain at an interesting time. It was really when the field was going through an evolution from being kind of widget-focused to being customer experience-focused. So that, along with, you'll hear from many of the analyst organizations that supply chain is being looked at now as a strategic enabler or strategic differentiator for a company. And as someone who's been responsible for supply chain strategy, I've been in the position of having to own performance management from a strategy execution perspective. Now, I'm a firm believer that skill, capability, and understanding the resource set within your organization is paramount to that. So I've been always very close with my HR partners in understanding what are the right set of metrics and what's the right set of data that you need to make sure you're going to actually achieve that strategy. In my so-called spare time, I also like to dabble in sort of the leading areas. I've done a little bit on social media analytics, started to touch a little bit on big data. So that's why I'm really excited and why I was excited to accept this invitation to speak with this group is that workforce intelligence or talent analytics is really an emerging area in this domain, and it gave me an opportunity to really kind of hone my skills and thoughts on how I thought this skill set around analytics could help enable and empower the HR community.
That's great. Very impressive. And again, we appreciate any business leader who likes to partner with the HR field. So thank you. Well, let's go into your area of expertise. What are some of the basic principles of using metrics and analytics that companies often overlook?
That's a really interesting question. And I think just to set the feel or the background is maybe it's important to actually define analytics. Now, as you mentioned, I sit on a professional society named Informs. It's really an organization of academics and professionals focused on using analytics and operations research to drive decision-making in industry. And this organization has said, we need to find and settle on a definition, and we did. We've defined analytics as really the scientific process of transforming data into insight for better decisions. So that's sort of a mouthful, but what does that really mean? The way we look at analytics is really across three layers. Descriptive analytics, which is sort of what's happened, looking at your organization today and understanding where we are and why we are, but it's really in the moment. Predictive analytics is really focusing on what could happen. You talk about forecasting, where you're going to be tomorrow. That's really the predictive analytics. Then there's prescriptive analytics, and this is when you might be looking to optimize the business. So what's the best outcome given a set of circumstances? So really being able to characterize a skill set across those three buckets has really helped us kind of define what we're talking about when we talk about analytics. Now, as far as some of the basics that companies often overlook, one of the first is probably when you're looking at your key performance indicators and looking at your data, it's often looked at from a lagging perspective, so kind of this rear view mirror type of approach to business management. And it's where we all start. It's where humans want to default. What got us to where we are, and that's great. It's really important. You have to learn your history so you don't repeat your history necessarily, but there's sometimes there are leading indicators that can predict when a behavior is going to happen, when something's going to happen. We often don't pay enough attention to those leading indicators. So really making sure that we're balancing that lagging indicator approach, or looking in the rearview mirror with really looking forward and where we're going. A second one is probably around silos. Oftentimes, organizations are constrained kind of by their existing structures. You might have finance only looking at finance data. You might have, operations people just looking at the operations data. But the reality is, by looking at different information across your different silos, and they can be, smaller within an organization or across organizations, that's really when the insight will start to emerge. So not to be shy to break organizational structures to look across the different areas. The third one is probably just, it's too hard, it's too expensive, or it's too risky. I hear that a lot. People say, I don't know where to start, I don't know where to go. Yeah, it can be. It can be a high risk, high reward type of situation. But it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to take a long time. You hear organizations in as quick as 3 months starting to turn around and get benefit out of spending more time looking at their data. And there's a maturity curve to that as well. And that's something that I will touch on when I'm at the conference is, let's start easy. You have to crawl before you can walk or run. Let's understand that and take it bit by bit and bite by bite to actually start seeing the world differently, leverage that information to run your organization differently. But that can't be done typically without an executive sponsor, like really someone who's engaged from the top down. And I'm hoping to be able to speak with the executive leadership who are coming to this conference as well, to really tell them how important it is for them to very outwardly show their commitment to leveraging data. And driving insight out of that data, whether it's at a descriptive level, a predictive level, or prescriptive level, to be able to really start using that to change the business. But that's where it needs to start. You can have some lone people with some great ideas, but if you really want to see analytics make a difference at a strategic level, really starting to change the business, you really need somebody who's willing to stand up and be that champion. And that person in that champion role has to make sure that they make adequate investment in the technologies and talent. Those are probably the two things I hear repeated the most: is our data's in the wrong places. We can't access it. We can't go across silo because we can't speak across these disparate data sources across silos. And then having the sufficient talent to be able to take, interpret, model, drive that data. Now, analytics talent is sort of an animal into itself, and I'll certainly share my thoughts on that with the group as well. But those are probably the big challenges. So leading indicators, siloed behavior, siloed information, too hard, too expensive, too risky, lack of that senior level commitment, and inadequate investment in technologies and talent.
Well, that's a great summary. Thank you. I know you'll be talking about data-driven decision-making at Summit 2012. Can you give us a sneak peek as to what you'll be covering for the group?
Oh, with pleasure. I really believe that it's by leveraging analytics or, talent analytics, or workforce analytics, depending on what you want to call it, this is really a way to elevate HR's role in the company's strategic decision making. It's a way to get the HR at the table for driving the organization differently. So I really want to talk about, what's involved to make that happen. When you're able to link key HR drivers, span of control, employee skills, capabilities to top and bottom line strategic drivers, that's when it starts to become relevant in the conversation of where is this company going. And I want to speak to, what do you need to make that happen? What does your information need to look like? What technologies do you need to invest in? What kind of talent, what kind of skills do you need involved? What kind of cultural changes need to be brought to bear to be able to accept this. And I want to do it not just from a executive perspective, but also from a very operational. Let's talk about the how. How do you get this done? What do we need to do to make this become a reality? It is a new and emerging area, as I mentioned, and there's a lot of opportunity here, but it's what do you need to be brave enough to take the risk to make that happen?
Great. Now, Anne, 2 questions for you. How can you specifically benefit our attendees? And what in your message can they easily take back and provide practical tips that either they'll be able to implement themselves or communicate to others back on their team?
That's a good question, too. My goal is to hopefully make everybody really excited about analytics and empower them all with new ideas. Go back thinking, I never thought this was worth it, or I didn't know what I needed to do, and now I understand. I know what we need what actions we need to take to be able to make this a reality for our organization. That they'll be able to increase the analytical capabilities within their own HR organizations, as well as understand what might be needed in different parts of the companies that they support to help just increase the analytical talent across the board. I also want to make sure that everyone feels like they have the resources on how to get started and who to ask for help. You know, I'm fortunate to be exposed to a large community of people with expertise in this area, so I want to make sure everybody goes and at least, knows if they get stuck that there's somebody there that can help them along the way. And as far as a message to take back, I really hope everyone can say, I'm prepared to take a chance on analytics. I know it will fundamentally change the way I do business.
Great. And we so appreciate you taking time to join us today. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Hear more from Anne and other thought leaders on Thursday, November 8th. For registration information, visit us online at HRMAC.org.